Here we are again. Portland is having another night of riots. And this is like 76 nights straight, I think. It's getting out of control. It's already been out of control. At this point, the big news story is going to be that Portland has not had a riot for a night, and that will be the breaking news story because it's becoming a regular thing at this point. But anyway, another night of riots. Let's look at what is going on this time. So, the Portland police declare another riot in downtown Portland on Wednesday night where hundreds of demonstrators assembled. A rally at Chapman Square and Lonsdale Square Park was mostly peaceful. The group blocked traffic at Southwest 3rd and Main for several hours. Late in the evening, demonstrators threw fireworks and other objects such as cans of paint, rocks, bottles, and eggs over the fence surrounding the courthouse. At the officers, and they lit small fires outside the courthouse and central precinct. Lasers were shined in the eyes of the officers. One officer suffered a severe hand injury, and others had minor injuries. Some of the demonstrators wore helmets, gas masks, and were armed with shields and batons. We have some pictures of the batons they were using, some rocks, and here's an officer that's been doused by the paint. But again, they threw eggs and other explosive devices and many different things. Again, officers were hurt and injured in this process. So, typical riot stuff, right? But look where they are back at it. So, the Portland police issued this. They said, to the people on Southwest 3rd Avenue outside the Federal Courthouse building. Sound familiar? We know there are people in the crowd who do not want violence or vandalism to occur, but know there are some people in this crowd who are engaged in criminal activity. Fireworks and fires are being set around the Federal Courthouse building. The criminal behavior must stop now. There's a video on Twitter here, outside the area, stuff blowing up and whatnot. But yeah, remember that not too long ago, we had some complaints about the Federal Courthouse in Portland, and it was that federal officers were showing up and making arrests and pushing back the rioters, and that the federal officers were, causing a lot of harm, and they were the ones stirring up all the problems, creating all of the issues. So the argument was that the federal officers were there unjustly, illegally, whatever you want to say, and that they needed to be pulled from the area. So, something is worked out to where the federal officers are going to leave as long as the police there in Portland, the local law enforcement can defend the area. So now the local law enforcement is here defending the area, and guess what is still going on? Rioting at the federal courthouse. Officers being attacked. All kinds of problems that they said were going to go away when the federal officers left. So guess what? It wasn't the problem that all these people thought it was. The federal officers in the area were not the issue, and it should have been pretty clear before, but now it's just a big "I told you so" slapped across there. But people still don't want to acknowledge that the rioters are the problem for some reason. Granted, plenty of people clearly see that, and we're all in agreement, but there's a large chunk on a certain side of the aisle, let's say, that does not want to condemn riots and thinks everything's hunky-dory with this. They're just angry protesters, is what they say, right? It's getting absolutely out of control. And we'll come back to this and touch on it here more in a minute. So I wanted to go to one more thing here with the district attorney, Mike Schmidt. So he was saying that they will drop most charges against Portland protesters. Interesting, right? See what he's going to do with this. He is going to be dropping charges against many protesters accused of low-level crimes since May 29th, 2020. Quote from Schmidt here. This policy acknowledges that factors that lead to the commission of criminal activity during a protest are incredibly complex. The protesters are angry. So this frustration can escalate to levels that violate the law. Some of the violations are impermissible by any standard, resulting in physical violence, injury, and worse. Others represent the instinctive reactions of people who have been gassed repeatedly and who have been struck with kinetic projectile weapons. You can see it right there in his quote. The same thing that people are continuing to say about this. oh, they're just acting that way because they're angry. This is an angry response. They wouldn't do this if the police didn't attack them first. That's not what is happening here. If they were peaceful protesters, the police would have no need to respond with a tear gas or a whatever kinetic projectile they're talking about. These groups of people are very aggressive and often break into riots, and you saw the weapons they have. They are armed. They are attacking the officers. The officers sustained many injuries, one major and a bunch of minor injuries. So it's not peaceful. Peaceful means they would not be doing harm. They are doing harm. And this quote saying that there are some, what did he say? Some are impermissible by any standard. That implies that some of these crimes occurring are permissible, and he goes on, to say that it's because they're instinctive reactions. So it's because the people are angry, is what he's trying to say. And that argument is getting really old. I get angry at things a lot. That doesn't mean I have the right to go out and beat the crap out of someone because I'm angry, or cause damage and destruction of property because I'm angry, or hurt people, attack people. It's ridiculous. So, it gets down to talk about, how one of the most common misdemeanor charges that was filed was the interfering with a peace officer, which there were 313 out of 550 cases, which is a lot there. So those aren't going to be charged at all. And Andy No points out here on Twitter that after Mike Schmidt announced he won't prosecute charges related to resisting arrest and interfering with police officers, Antifa groups in Portland are going into overdrive about tactics on how to de-arrest their comrades. That is where they swarm an officer during arrest. So yes, now they are not going to get in trouble for this sort of thing. If they see one of their guys do something extreme that does warrant, an arrest, and that probably will be prosecuted, look, we can now interfere and stop this because we're not going to get in trouble at all. We're not going to get arrested. So people, when you let up on certain boundaries and certain rules you have established, let's say, and allow people more wiggle room, especially people acting in bad faith, trying to do the absolute worst possible, and the only thing holding them back is the rules that are in place. When you lighten up those rules, they are going to push up to that line as far as they can and even bend it back as far as they can. So it's no surprise with what he's saying here that these protesters are doing this sort of thing and doing this in response to what the district attorney set up there. But all that to say is just, this is ridiculous, this treatment that is being given to a lot of these out-of-control protests that turn into riots. I still don't understand, after this long, look how long this has been going on, how can we not differentiate between a peaceful protest and violent rioters? Come on. It's like people are digging their feet in and trying to stand their ground on this concept that it's just angry protesters that are justified in their actions. You have got to be kidding me at this point. At this point, I don't even know if any of them even remember why they're rioting. Supposedly, it's about police brutality and the whole thing with George Floyd setting everything off. Do they even remember what happened there? And look at all the changes people are looking to implement around the country with police reform and prison reform. The conversation's been started and things are being worked on. But no, people want to still burn it all down, I suppose, and cause chaos and destruction and as much damage as possible. For how long, I don't know. But this is not stopping. They are keeping it going there in Portland. And we're going to continue to see stuff like this, I think. They brought out the Wall of Moms again, this supposed, honorable group because they're moms. I've said this before. Just because someone is a mom does not mean they're a good person. they're not, it doesn't mean there's anything special about them whatsoever. They might not even be, it's a bunch of women in yellow shirts. We don't even know if they're all moms. And even if they are, who cares? They can still be causing problems and assisting with the riots. But it's this attempt. I say all this because there's an attempt to make it look like the law enforcement side is the evil side in the group, in the conflict, and that they are the ones we should be against, right? And if a bunch of people were just going out peacefully and were being attacked by law enforcement, I'd be completely down with what you're saying and be like, yeah, something is wrong here. I'd side with the protesters. But when you've got protesters launching all variety of different projectiles at officers, and they're getting injured and burned and, bruised and any type of injuries they've had, it's at that point, it's not peaceful anymore. But you're not fooling me. You're not fooling many of the people in this country that look at these videos and see what you're doing there. Again, a lot of people do think it's justified and whatnot, but I don't know how you reason with stupid. So, but that's pretty much all we have on the most recent riot update. We will continue to look at more going on with that as it happens. I don't know. Maybe we'll do a special 100 nights straight of riots party, because hopefully it quits before then. But at this rate, I don't know. They're probably going to try to set some sort of Guinness World Record for world's longest riot. I'm not sure. But thank you all for tuning in. We will see you in the next segment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to help with the algorithm. Other than that, you all have a good one. We'll see you next time.